What's up, StudyBuds? I'm your StudyBud Glenn, and for today's trip to the StudyWorld, we are going to talk about trigonometry, and that includes lines, angles, and triangles. But before we begin our lesson, let us establish first the goal of this video. By the end of this video, you, StudyBuds, should be able to know the difference between line segments and rays, identify the different parts of an angle, know the different types of angles, differentiate complementary angles from supplementary angles, learn about the properties of angles such as the properties of the vertical angles and angles formed by transversals through parallel lines. Know what a triangle is and its three different types, identify the parts of a right triangle, and learn about the Pythagorean theorem. Are you ready, StudyBuds? Let's fly! The word trigonometry was derived from the Greek word trigono, meaning triangle, and metron, meaning measure. As the name suggests, it is all about triangles, specifically right-angled triangles with one of the internal angles measuring 90 degrees. Now let's start with the basics, and the first one in our list is the line. A line is a path of one point moving. It is straight, has no thickness, and extends infinitely. We also have line segments and rays, which are also types of lines. First off is the line segment. It is the part of the line that connects 2 points and has a distance. In contrast to the line segment, the ray is the part of the line with a start point but has no end point. It also extends infinitely in only one direction. Next up after lines are angles. Angles can be defined as the figure formed by two rays meeting at the common endpoint. It has three components, namely the vertex, the initial side, and the terminal side. Just a side note, did you know that the word angle has been derived from the Latin word angulus, meaning a little bending? Going back, so the first component of the angle that we are going to discuss is the vertex. The vertex is the common endpoint at which the two rays meet to form an angle. Next, we have the initial side. The initial side of an angle is the side lying on the positive x-axis of the Cartesian plane. Lastly, we have the terminal side. It is the side where the measurement of an angle stops. Now that we are done with the components of an angle, we are now going to discuss degrees. Usually denoted by this symbol, the degree is a measure for angles that considers one full rotation equal to 360 degrees. That means 90 degrees is 1/4 of a full rotation. Now let's proceed to the different types of angles. The name of the angle changes as the measure of the angle increases, and the first type is the acute angle. This angle measures less than 90 degrees. The angle that measures exactly 90 degrees is called the right angle. The obtuse angle measures more than 90 degrees but less than 180 degrees. The straight angle is an angle that measures exactly 180 degrees. And last but not the least is the reflex angle, which measures more than 180 degrees. We also have complementary angles, which are angles formed if two angles add up to 90 degrees, making it a right angle. Moreover, these two angles don't necessarily have to be together. As long as they sum up to 90 degrees, they are already considered as complementary angles. And just a fun fact, complementary comes from the Latin word completum, meaning completed, because the right angle is thought of as being a complete angle. Now that we are done with the complementary angles, let's proceed to the next type, supplementary angles. Supplementary angles are formed when two angles added together sum up to a total of 180 degrees, and together they form a straight angle. For example, angle A that measures 120 degrees is supplementary to angle B that measures 60 degrees because together the measures of the angles add up to 180 degrees. Cool! Now that we know already the meaning of the supplementary angle, here's a trivia for you. Did you know that the word supplement comes from the Latin word supplere, meaning to complete or supply what is needed? Next are the properties of angles, which are the vertical angles and the angles formed by transversals through parallel lines. Remember that an angle is a figure in which two rays emerge from a common point. The first property of angle that we are going to discuss is the vertical angles. Vertical angles are formed when two lines intersect at a point, and by definition, vertical angles are congruent. That means they have the same measure. For you to better understand this, here's an example. In this figure, angles B and D are vertical angles. That means they both have the same measure. If angle D is equal to 50 degrees, then angle B should also be equal to 50 degrees. How then should we know the measures of angles A and C? Let's use the knowledge that we have. We know that angles B and D both equal to 50 degrees, meaning they add up to 100 degrees. And we know that the sum of these four angles is 360 degrees. So what's left for angles A and C to share is 360 degrees minus 100 degrees, and that is 260 degrees. Angles A and C are also vertical angles, meaning they share the same measure. So we can just divide 260 degrees by 2 and find that angles A and C each measure 130 degrees. Next in our list would be the angles formed by transversals cutting through parallel lines. Remember that a transversal is a line that intersects two or more other lines, and often parallel lines. When two or more lines are cut by a transversal, the angles which occupy the same relative position are called corresponding angles. When the lines are parallel, the corresponding angles are congruent. When two lines are cut by a transversal, the pairs of angles on one side of the transversal and inside the two lines are called consecutive interior angles. If two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then the pairs of consecutive interior angles formed are supplementary. When two lines are cut by a transversal, the pairs of angles on either side of the transversal and inside the two lines are called the alternate interior angles. If two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then the alternate interior angles formed are congruent. When two lines are cut by a transversal, the pairs of angles on either side of the transversal and outside the two lines are called the alternate exterior angles. Whoa, study buds, ginawa dalom. Well done. Now that we have completed the properties of angles, we'll proceed to our next topic, which is all about triangles. Okay, so what is a triangle? A triangle is a polygon shape that has 3 sides and 3 angles that add up to 180 degrees. Next are the different types of triangles that also have the same or different form or angle. There are 3 special names given to triangles that tell how many sides are equal, which can possibly be 3, 2, or no equal sides or angles at all. First is the equilateral triangle. As the name suggests, it is a triangle whose sides and angles are all equal. Specifically, all the angles are equal to 60 degrees. Next would be the isosceles triangle. Basically, an isosceles triangle has 2 equal sides and 2 equal angles. And lastly, the right triangle is a triangle with a right angle as its interior angle. And that right angle is usually denoted by a small square at the corner. And it is also used in the Pythagorean Theorem. The sides A, B, and C of such a triangle satisfy the Pythagorean Theorem with the formula of A squared plus B squared equals C squared, which we will be proving in a few moments. A right triangle consists of 2 legs and a hypotenuse. The 2 legs of the right triangle meet at a 90-degree angle, and the hypotenuse is the longest side of the right triangle, and it is the side opposite to the right angle. Now we are finally in our last and final topic in trigonometry for today, which is about the Pythagorean Theorem. Over 2,000 years ago, there was an amazing discovery about triangles. When a triangle has a right angle, which is equal to 90 degrees, and squares are made on each of the 3 sides, then the biggest square has the exact same area as the other 2 squares put together. The formula for this is defined by the renowned Pythagorean Theorem, which is A squared plus B squared equals C squared, where C is the longest side of the triangle, or the hypotenuse, and A and B are the other 2 sides. In summary, trigonometry is simply the study of triangles and their components. And in this video, we talked about lines and defined that a line is a trace of a moving point in 1 dimension, and a line segment is a finite portion of a line, and a ray is a form of a line with only 1 endpoint and the other extends infinitely. And we also talked about angles and defined that an angle is formed from 2 rays with a common vertex, and it has 3 main components, namely the vertex, the initial side, and the terminal side. And we also talked about degrees, and that the degree is an angle measure that considers 1 full rotation equal to 360 degrees, and there are different types of angles according to their degree measures. In addition, we talked about complementary angles and defined that complementary angles are formed if 2 angles sum up to 90 degrees, while supplementary angles total to 180 degrees. We also had the properties of angles, the vertical angles that are opposite and actually equal to one another when 2 lines intersect, and corresponding angles formed by transversals cutting through parallel lines congruent. We also had the different types of triangles, and finally the Pythagorean Theorem, which states that the sum of the squares of the legs of a right triangle is equal to the square of the length of the hypotenuse. angles as defined by the equation a squared plus b squared equals c squared. As one of the most important fields of mathematics, particularly for careers that are built around calculating angles, a working knowledge of trigonometry and its uses is important for all students of all ages. And that's it, StudyBuds. This has been your StudyBud Glenn, reminding you to study well. Till our next trip to the Study World, StudyBuds.